Greetings, Culturians, and welcome back to the new year. That's right, 2026 is upon us, and so are a lot of other opportunities that we probably didn't think were, like a chance to play a brand new James Bond video game. And a lot of people probably aren't going to want to. Why? Well, because it seems to have a bit of the message, and the old school Bond would be absolutely tone deaf. Disagree with that? Well, here we go. Now, before we get started, just a real quick reminder, I'm on my way to 50K, which means you need to double check and make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button right now, please. I would appreciate it. Consider it a personal favor. And while you're down there, just hit that thumbs up button. In fact, if you hit the thumbs up button, that helps immensely too, along with some comments when we get to the end of this, because I want to know what you think. But from our friends over at G&G, we have a story that I think is boggling to me, especially if you know the background of Ian Fleming and the context of how these books were written and how they often referred to actual people. James Bond will have modern values. There you go. Absolute garbage guaranteed. In 007 First Light, the dev claims the old school Bond would be tone deaf, and Marvin Montanaro put this story together for us over there on the G&G site. Now, I'm going to disagree. Modern day Bond is basically Bond back in the 1950s. That's the only way you can tell these particular stories. You have to get into the mind of the people that won World War II. And basically, people associated with Ian Fleming and other people of that era understood what it took to win. It took excellent craft, and it took subterfuge. It took using every tool in the toolbox, including sexuality, which is why femme fatales were dominating even through the 70s. It took until the 80s before they started to take on a girl power style version of roles. And then after that, we got successively worse because people were preaching a message that would, well, essentially undermine men. But we'll separate all of that from this story right now. Based on this headline, what do you think? You think this is going to be good? I don't know. What I know is this. The phrase modern values has become one of the most reliable warning signs in entertainment, and now it's officially attached to James Bond. According to comments from IO Interactive, who used to be awesome, the upcoming video game 007 First Light will deliberately move away from what the studio describes as old school Bond. The developers are arguing that such a portrayal would be tone deaf today. And all I'm going to tell them is you are never going to get the audience you used to have with thinking like that. Instead, the studio says its version of the iconic spy will reflect modern values. No. They're not modern values. They are moderated values, and they're terrible ones at that. They are guaranteed losses in the real world, and present Bond is going to be more of a contemporary figure, which means that all of these amazing characters that existed in this world for, well, the first 25 films, or 24, or actually technically until Daniel Craig showed up to destroy everything, were basically a rough and tumble womanizing character that drank and debauched like a real playboy, which is basically everything that you need in spycraft to have a persona that allows you to do all the other things you have to do in spycraft. For longtime fans of the franchise, that framing alone is enough to raise serious concerns. Well, it's red flags, it's red lights, and it means I am not buying this thing. This is not just about this game, but about a broader direction for James Bond as a character, which is being directly reflected from Amazon, who acquired the rights to utilize this character in the first place. IO Interactive says old school Bond would be tone deaf, and I disagree 100%. In an interview that was granted to Monstervine, IO Interactive cinematics director Martin M. Borg explained why the studio believes its take on James Bond needs to shift away from earlier portrayals, saying, so he's evolved through the decades decades, and obviously we reflect modern values, which basically is trying to convey the idea that these new progressive baloney sausage garbage fests that we have been, well, ignoring and shunning and not spending money on are what they think everybody wants, despite the fact that nobody is consuming them and everybody's throwing shade and what they like to describe as hate or review bombs. Instead, this is not going to be your old school Bond, which would just be tone deaf in this day, right? He's a modern guy, which, no, he isn't, and he shouldn't be. In fact, if you have to, quote unquote, modernize Bond, then you should be aging backwards with the franchise and starting from a point where Bond supposedly works in your estimation, taking him back into the 50s and 60s and giving us a Mad Men version style of James Bond, which is what people expect, what people desire, and what people will pay for. This James Bond game from IO Interactive is probably going to be a colossal failure, and if I were to be even gifted it and I played it, I would do it in the open, in public, and give exactly my unfiltered thoughts, which oftentimes I usually filter because occasionally a bad word may sneak in there. Amborg also addressed Bond's historic reputation as a womanizer, acknowledging that some familiar traits remain while emphasizing that they have been reframed, which is not good news. Anytime these guys decide to soy this stuff up, it drives the audience away and essentially strips away the character, elements from a character that people are always looking for and should always be present. Saying, yeah, you will see that, Emborg said, when asked on Bond's characteristics, whether Bond would retain certain of those characteristics before reiterating that the character has been adjusted to align with modern sensibilities. And what he should be saying is with woke sensibilities, since that's what these progressive weirdos are actually describing when they say stuff like that. The problem with modern values as a creative guideline is, well, they're not much of one. They are, we only believe in woke radical feminism, and you, despite the fact that you don't enjoy that, will have to tolerate it, and if you don't, we're going to call you names. It's always the fans' fault, right? This is where the alarm bells start ringing, according to Marvin, and he's right. Modern values is not a concrete creative principle. It's a crappy one. It's what's led to a lot of terrible failures and financial flops. It's a moving target that nobody seems to be able to hit because nobody's willing to pay for it. And that changes depending upon cultural trends, social pressure, which these people are weak to, and industry politics, which are completely compromised, and we should have been better gatekeepers. Now, when creators rely on that phrase to justify the changes that they're making, they just confirm that their soy latte is the thing that drives their life, and the barista behind the counter is likely wearing a rainbow bandana. But we'll separate all of that from this for just a moment to acknowledge Grummz, who put out an X tweet here saying, "Bond game is dead. Some game devs have learned nothing. If you made old school Bond, it would stand out so much you would print money. But no, you have to reflect modern values for an audience that doesn't exist. And if you need proof of that, the last 5 years will give you a crate load, and basically almost everything Disney's made is, well, floptastic proof of that when it comes to cinema or even television. Nobody wants this garbage and they don't pay for it, which is why Assassin's Creed, despite its initial early sales numbers, is now being hidden from sight because it's not looking so good. James Bond has never been a modern role. He was designed as a fantasy, a confident, dangerous, arrogant, and morally ambiguous individual, and a super spy. That edge wasn't a flaw. It was Ian Fleming's secret weapon compared to other people trying to write spy novels of the time. It was the entire point of the character. Bond stood apart because he didn't behave like everyone else or what everybody else's preferences may be, including M. who was frequently disappointed in his misadventures and often called them out for it. When developers start framing classic Bond as something embarrassing or inappropriate, it suggests a lack of confidence and a lack of respect for the character itself and its core identity. Worse, it suggests a lack of trust in audiences to distinguish between fiction, fantasy, and real-world behavior, which has been the biggest flaw in essentially any modern film or television product, let alone video games, which are, well, kind of failing right now too. Think back to the last successful video game and what it was and why. I think Eve will suggest exactly the reasoning. Rewriting Bond instead of trusting the audience is the problem here. No one is asking for a carbon copy of the 1960s spy that dropped untouched into a modern game. Nor do we necessarily need a modern game, would be my argument, but we'll move forward here. Updating technology, world building, and gameplay mechanics is expected, but rewriting Bond's personality to satisfy abstract values, well, that's an entirely different kettle of fish. Entertainment history, especially recent history, is littered with franchises that attempted to modernize heroes only to sand down everything that made them interesting and basically acknowledged and revered the built-in audience that they had created. The result is often a character that looks familiar on the surface, but feels hollow underneath. And since there's no additional effort to redevelop that character, it's you assuming you're going to get what you expect, but getting nothing and feeling unsatisfied. The cautious, sanitized, and instantly dated character that you've built up in this new form is, stuck in that one moment in time and really will have no staying power as the cultural moment shifts again. It's a real danger here, not evolution. It's erosion and disrespect, which I think is even worse. So what does this mean for the future of Bond? Well, to me, it means Bond is dead. And if this is the direction IO Interactive is going in, you can guarantee that this is also the same direction that MGM is going, which means you're not going to have James Bond anymore. You're going to have something that is supposedly that, or in name only, like so many other things in the modern world, and it's going to lose its cultural relevance and its impact on the modern zeitgeist. If you're looking for anything modern, you need to be culturally relevant, and this is a signal that it's abandoning any of that relevance and anything cultural that essentially was in vogue since 1960s. Well, I just want to say thank you to Sir Ian Fleming and everybody else that came along to portray the original James Bond character and everyone else that was associated with them. I am going to weep for IO Interactive as it signals itself as another dying entity in video game creation, and just point out that this never seems to work out. But those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know your thoughts about James Bond in the comments section down below. Let me know if you're going to buy this video game or even bother to go see any future Bond movie, basically made by people who want to destroy him and tear him down as the icon that he is and replace him with some kind of soy boy barista that supposedly has some spycraft. As always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya, but certainly not playing this craptastic game.